see. Calgary, let me know when you can hear me on the microphone. Is this everyone? No. All right. I'll wait a couple minutes. Like, how many are in this cohort? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. All right. So we're just missing 4. Whatever. They can. I don't know. I don't have a good response. It's the morning. Words are hard. I will wait for Calgary though, so we will wait a little bit of time. It is Calgary, right? I have that right? Yeah, okay. Okay. And then you guys. What was this in response to?
That was yesterday getting home, and I thought maybe everyone else was feeling the same way.
It's like day 2 of boot camp and you already feel like that. That's funny.
I figured it's just like when you get to bed, you're like, yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Just waiting on Calgary. Has anyone got any good Wednesday morning jokes while we wait for Calgary? I saw anyone that was looking at me put their head down at that point. Okay, spiders. Wait. Yeah, okay, spiders, here we go. Spiders are the only web developers that enjoy bugs. Get it? Yeah? Because they develop. It's okay, I'm a dad, so I'm allowed to tell dad jokes. Technical difficulties, sound issues. Is that on my end? I don't know, maybe. I don't think so. Oh. Cool. Hey, Otis. Can you turn off the blue light filter? Maybe. Is the audio working? Sweet, okay. So I have this, everyone's heard of Flux probably, right? The thing that makes your screen orange. There's a piece of software that makes your screen orange, and it's called Flux or Flux, whatever. I keep it on all the time. It's supposed to like help you. So when you're working at your computer late at night, the blue light apparently keeps you awake. The orange light doesn't. Anyway, I keep it on all the time. Does anyone not like the orange tint? Sometimes cohorts want me to turn it off. Let's see. If I get rid of it, it looks like this. Wait. There. Blinding blue light. Or there's the soft orange that makes everyone feel a little bit more comfy and drowsy in the morning. I think it's transitioning back in. Anyone have a preference? Anyone like strongly want it one way or the other? Including you, Calgary? Yeah? Okay, if everyone's fine with orange, I'm going to keep on orange. Unless, Darren, you really want me to turn it off. Sorry, I can't hear you. Really? Is it the batteries? I think it seems to be fine. Let's see. I'm gonna open up my own video and listen to myself talk. Does that enable audio? Oh, I guess I should turn on audio. Sounds good to me. Sounds good to me. You were good for a second, then not. All right, am I good now? I hate technical difficulties. I hate these microphones. Nope. Oh, not loud enough. I can maybe do something about that. Let's see, if I move this thing, does that make it louder? Okay, alright, wait, alright, so you can hear me and it's not too muffled or anything weird, and this is now in front of my face. Just verifying. Cool, alright. Cool. Sweet. Thanks, Braden. You cohorts love your Giphies. So I was not here on Monday, so I'm going to start by introducing... Damn it. By introducing myself. My name is Sam. I am an instructor here for the Web Bootcamp, and I'm the head instructor for the iOS Bootcamp. I also do some curriculum development here at Lighthouse and mentor, so you'll see me around a lot. I've been developing iOS apps for about 10 years and been working in Vancouver for the last 5 or 6 years and at Lighthouse Labs for 3 years. That's a good enough summary of who I am. Quirky facts. Let's see. I really like using emojis for things. You know, like the first application you ever wrote was a hello world, and you'd like console log hello world. I just find the text to be really kind of plain and boring, so I'd way rather use emojis. So I have some keyboard shortcuts set up for my favorite emojis. So I got the jazz hands emoji, which is really the hug emoji, but looks like jazz hands. When things are going well, I got the cool sunglasses emoji, and when things are not going well, I have the poop emoji. Right there. So, let's see, today, what are we talking about? Objects in JS. Okay, so has anyone looked at the assignments or anything for today yet? No? Yeah? One person. So today we're going to be talking about objects, a little bit about primitive types, how we store data, how we organize data, and a little bit about how we can add behavior to objects to link it to our data. So before we dive into objects, let's see, let's list all of the types in JavaScript. What are all of the different types in JavaScript? Integer is a type of number, but what is the type? Yeah, number. So number is a type in JavaScript. That includes things like ints, so I don't know, yeah, 9, sure, 1. But it also includes doubles and floats. So like 1.9 would be a float. What else? String, yeah, exactly. The things that we put in double quotes or single quotes. Boolean. What are the different Boolean values? True or false. Any others? No, it's true or false. That is it. What else? Array is not a type in JavaScript. Null. How many different values can we have for null? Just null, yeah. The type is null, the value is null. Undefined. Again, the type is undefined, the value is undefined. So that's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 4, 5, yep. It's 2 more. Functions and arrays are not their own type. They are a subset of a different type. Is that? Yeah, object. Object, which we're going to be talking about today. Nan is a... Right? Does everyone know what nan is? Like, if I try and multiply, I don't know, 1 by hello, I'm going to get nan. Stands for not a number. Type of nan is actually a number. Yeah, so nan is a number. What else? There's one more, and I don't expect Anyone to really know it? Yeah, because we're never going to use it in boot camp. It is new to ES6, and we're not going to cover it at all in boot camp. But these are all the different types. These are all primitive types. This is not a primitive type. Okay. So these are the primitives, and everything else we have is an object. So functions are objects, arrays are objects, objects are objects. But objects are these data structures that give us a lot of control over behavior and ways to organize our data. So if these are all the different primitive values, what is a data structure? What do I mean when I say a data structure? Yeah, like a way of structuring data. A way of storing and organizing data. Storing and organizing. We know we can create variables to store data, but we don't really have a plan for organization if we're just creating a ton of variables. One data structure that we used in the prep course that wasn't just plain old objects was the array that allowed us to store our data in an ordered data structure, basically. So we could put a bunch of variables, a bunch of values into an array, and we could access each one using an index. So it gives us an ordered way of organizing our data. So an array is a data structure. Today we are talking about objects, and we're going to be talking about object literals. This syntax. Everyone used, or has anyone not used this syntax to create an object? No? Okay. Pardon? Oh, has anyone not used this syntax? Sorry. Anyone never created an object? Okay, one or two of you. I think it came up in the prep course a little bit. But this will create a brand new object, an object literal. So in the same way that like this syntax will create a brand new array, this will create a brand new object. There are many ways of creating objects and many different types of objects, like an array is a type of object, and I can create dates and functions. But when we want to create just a plain old empty object, we will use the object literal syntax, which looks like this, which will create a brand new object. I should actually. What do I mean by simple pure object? We will get to that in a moment. But this is, just in case anyone like remembers from the prep course or from other places, this is the type of objects we'll be working with today. What do you mean? So if I used square brackets? Oh, okay. Yeah, so if I use the square brackets instead of the curly braces, does that create a completely different thing? Is that the question? Yeah, so this will create an array, which is an ordered set of things, and this will create an object, which is a different type of data structure that we'll be learning about today. But before we get into that, I should mention in the teach notes here, when it comes to live coding, don't try and code along with me right now. When I write notes, don't try and scribble down all the exact notes that I'm doing. Most lecturers, myself definitely, if you see it on my screen, you're going to get it in the lecture notes after. So everything I write here, every line of code I write, you will get in the notes after. If you want to take other notes just for yourself that aren't just completely copying what I'm doing, that's great, that's fine. But you will get all of this stuff in the lecture notes after. So, yeah.
Sorry, is a function a data structure also, or is that a different?
In JavaScript it is, because a function is an object in JavaScript.
Oh.
So, actually before we look at some code examples, let's talk a little bit more about objects. So objects are key value pairs. A lot of things in programming, a lot of ways of storing data are using key value pairs. So it's kind of like how we'd create variables, really. We have so I'm just going to draw this out. Create an object like this, but we can define key value pairs, kind of like we would do variables. So what might you create a variable for? I don't know, maybe like a name? What's a good name? Otis? Everyone's met Otis, right? Not in Calgary, sorry, it's the dog in Vancouver. I'm going to put this on multiple lines. What else? Age? For who? But yeah, this is kind of like the format for objects. It is a set of key value pairs. So it gives us a way of organizing our data using keys, that thing on the left of the or the colon, and the value, which is the thing to the right. Very similar to creating variables, right? Like I create name equals Otis. Super similar. But we're storing it in a single data structure here. Yeah, so you'll hear this referred to as the key, this as the value, or you will hear this word property used a lot, and that refers to the entire relationship. So if I say like the name property on that object, I'm talking about the fact that the key is name and the value is also Otis. So it's good to be familiar with that terminology. So let's actually take a look at some code examples. You've all had lectures with Nima. Has he done anything with Kanye West yet? Did he mention Kanye West yet? Oh, okay, so he loves doing code examples with Kanye West. I don't come prepared with anything for code examples, so I rely on all of you to give me like things to work with. So I need to build a thing. Does anyone have a noun for what I can use to go with? School bus, sweet. So we have a school bus.js. Yeah, Nima's pretty proud of how many Kanye West examples he has. You will see them. Okay, so school bus. So what properties would a school bus have? What kind of things like? Wow, I love it. All right, I couldn't even finish my sentence. You guys are already yelling it out. So we got like number of students. That was the first one. Number of students. How many students would a school bus have? 20. Color. Color or color? We're Canadian. Yellow. What else? Capacity. 30. What else? Calgary, feel free to chime in and give our school bus some properties. Wheels, round and round, love it. Whoops. Yeah, that's good. Sorry, I gotta put my... Okay, I'm gonna reorganize my window, sorry, just a little bit. I'm gonna put Slack in this bit, so every time I wanna scroll between my browser and notes, I have to look at Calgary. Okay, let's see. Magic school bus. We could have like a var is magic. That would allow us to have a boolean. Okay, I think that's enough properties, unless anyone... Okay, cool. So all of these variables define some sort of state on a school bus. So we can picture a school bus where the number of students is 20, the color is yellow, the capacity is 30, the wheels go round and round, and is magic is true, so it's a magic school bus. So all of these are talking about a single school bus. If I then want to talk about another school bus, and I want to be able to define the exact same variables, have the exact same data, basically, or types of data for that school bus, I might have to do something like this. I don't know, number of students, 2, color, 2, capacity, 2, wheels. We'll make the second one not magic. Cool. Right? Does that make sense to everyone? Does anyone have any questions about what I've done there? Right, I got like school bus 1, school bus 2. Has anyone coded stuff that kind of looks like this ever? Where you got like, yeah, thing 1, thing 2, thing, yeah. It happens in the beginning. It's okay. It gets better. So this is using just variables. This is how I would define data for school buses. This is the data I need for 2 school buses. Here it is using variables. All of these bits of data I can represent using primitive types. In fact, all data, anything that I need to represent in my code, all the data will be a primitive type. strings, numbers, booleans, undefined, null, they're all I need, and they're all we're going to use. The reason we have data structures is so that we can organize our data better. So instead of creating a bunch of variables, different variables for my school bus 1 and school bus 2, I'm going to use an object, a data structure, to organize this data. So I'm just going to move down so that we can keep that code up at the top. So instead of creating all of these as variables, they are instead going to be, what are they called? Properties on an object, right? Key value pairs. So that means, actually I'm going to go back. That means a couple of things change, but not, like, the idea stays the same. Some syntax changes and we get stored in an object. So one of the major things that changes, I obviously get rid of the var keyword, get rid of semicolons and replace them with commas. Get rid of an equal sign, replace it with a colon, and then wrap everything in curly braces. This is now an object that I can give a variable name to that represents the exact same data, but it's organized a lot nicer. I could even have, maybe school bus 1 and school bus 2. Then maybe I could store it in an array and I wouldn't even need this 1 and 2 thing. But this data stayed exactly the same. It's just now it's organized a little bit differently. We create object using the object literal syntax, and then we define a bunch of key value pairs. Key is the thing to the left, value is the thing to the right of the colon, and then each of them is separated by a comma. Okay, any questions so far about that? Yeah. You do not need a colon after the last property, but should you put one in there? Any opinions? Someone said, are you not supposed to have hanging commas? Why not? What's that? Be consistent. It's up to you. Hanging commas are completely fine in JavaScript. They are not allowed in JSON. But yeah, you can do whatever you want. I'm going to remove mine, actually. Makes it a little bit easier. But yeah, just be consistent. Don't have some objects with hanging commas and other ones that don't. Purely for aesthetic reasons. It's going to be weird to look. I'm going to be looking, why does he have a comma there and not there? Okay. Any other questions?
I think I might be jumping ahead, but now is it organized in such a way that it can be called pod, like how we did array length or periods, after.
So the question was, is it now set up in a way that when we used arrays, we could call array.length and stuff like that? Yeah. Can we start accessing stuff on this object? Yeah, no, actually, that's perfect segue into the next thing. So let's say I wanted to console log a variable, like number of students. I would just console log, then put the variable in there, and that'd be fine, right? I could run this code, and we would see, what, 20 printed to the console? Let's actually try that. Node, what did I call this? School bus? Yeah, 20. Easy. How can I print the color of this school bus 1? How do I access this property? School bus 1 what? Dot color. So if I just write in school bus, that is accessing the entire object. But if I want to access a single property, I can use dot notation. And now it should print out yellow. What other ways can I access the color? I can use the dot notation. And I can use square brackets. So with the dot notation, I just put the exact name of capacity, the name of the property, right? In this case, capacity. If I use square brackets, these square brackets expect a string. So if I'm using square brackets, I will pass in the string name of the property, like that. Always expects a string. So remember that. If you're using the square brackets, it's going to expect a string. If you're using dot notation, it's just going to expect the identifier. Okay. Now, I'll just prove that works. Still yellow. That should have been my go-to, right? Then we could always see round and round. The wheels on the bus go. It was only a matter of time before that happened. Okay, so school bus color, exactly. Square brackets, put in a string. Double quotes, single quotes, doesn't matter as long as it's a string. It expects a string. This is similar to the array syntax, right? When we wanted to access an item out of the array, we'd use square brackets and put in an integer. With objects, we just put in the string. I will probably make a lot of comparisons between object like this, objects with their key value pairs, and arrays. But yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the keys and the values, actually. What is a valid key? What can I type in to the left of the colon and this still work? Could it be only alphanumeric? So like I couldn't type in, I don't know, hello 1 like that, I guess. Actually, I can't do that. I can't do it exactly that way. Or maybe like, maybe I want a property name to be, what would be like, what's another property of a school bus? Number of windows, right? Is this a valid key? Someone said it just needs brackets.
I mean, for completion. Yeah, go ahead.
So I could use underscores and then I wouldn't need quotes, and that would make it a valid identifier. But all a key needs to be is a valid string. So the keys of an object are strings, and the values are any value. Right? So that could be numbers, that could be strings, that could be undefined, null, whatever. Number of windows is null. Or like nan, because that seems more fun. But the thing to the left is a string. So why haven't I wrapped all of these in quotes? Because they don't have special characters. These are valid identifiers. This is not a valid identifier. What does it mean to be a valid identifier in JavaScript? Essentially, like valid identifier in JavaScript. This is the one I want. Yeah, this is always the one I want when I'm talking about identifiers in JavaScript. What does it mean to be a valid identifier in JavaScript? There are a set of rules, and if you follow these rules, you can create valid identifiers in JavaScript. You can use certain characters to create variables and create property names for objects where you don't need to wrap them in a string. So if I want to create a variable, we know that I can use letters. We know that I can use numbers as long as the number doesn't start the variable name. I can use underscores, again, as long as it doesn't start. I can't use hyphens. I can't use like certain special characters. That doesn't work. But these are all valid identifiers. And this website right here will tell you if something is a valid identifier or not. And this is, in fact, a valid identifier in JavaScript. So I could create a variable in JavaScript called this. That's what I mean by a valid identifier. If you're confused about that, it's like, what can I name a variable? That is a valid identifier, and if you can name a variable that way, you can name a property on an object that way without having to use quotes, which is usually preferable. But all properties on objects are strings, so if you want to name it whatever you want, it just has to be a valid string. So I can put spaces in as long as I put in quotes. Absolutely, yeah. So the question was, as long as it's not a valid identifier, if we just put it in quotes, we can use it, yeah. For property names, for key names. Yeah, exactly. Thought I had something else to say there, but I don't. Another popular valid identifier in JavaScript that you'll see when it comes to week 3 is $. But there are certain things that are completely valid to name your variables. You maybe shouldn't name your variables this, but you can if you wanted to. Right. Okay. So. Explain the dollar sign?
Yeah, like why it's not really good to use it? Like I've seen it in tutorials. Who's used it?
Yes. So the dollar sign is a valid identifier in JavaScript for internal use reasons. The people who created JavaScript like, yeah, let's make dollar sign valid so that like our internal private objects that people aren't supposed to really use can have dollar signs and stuff. But when JavaScript frameworks and libraries became popular for the browser, people started naming their entire libraries with a dollar sign to make it look kind of cool, I guess, or to have it like really short. So when we go to use jQuery and other libraries, it would actually be called dollar sign instead of jQuery, which just naming convention. We should never really use dollar sign in our own applications. It's not descriptive. It doesn't tell us what's going on. Variable names should be descriptive. Property names should be descriptive. Dollar sign is so far from descriptive. Right, but like what kind of dollars, you know? Like I guess it'd be fine to put in the variable name, like I don't know, dollars in my pocket maybe, because then it's like, where are the dollars? Oh, they're in my pocket. How many? 0. But yeah, I don't know. I honestly think like this thing is probably more a descriptive name than dollar sign.
Can you make the key in the object a string from another key?
Can you make the key in the object a string from another key? So you want me to like a school bus 1 dot color.
Yeah.
So yellow. What would yellow's value be?
Yeah.
9. I don't know. Yeah, no, you can't.
There's no like sub values that can be stored. Or only just like
There are ways of storing sub values. We'll get to that a little bit later. But there's no way of like, you know, hey, this is a string, so why don't I just use this string as the value? You could do this in less simple ways, but just doing it this way won't work. That was a funny question. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about accessing properties. So if I want to check if a bus is magic, I can console log schoolbus1.magic. Easy. If I want to console log number of windows, well, that's not going to work. So how do I access the number of windows property on the school bus? I wear this microphone funny so it slips around. So one way I can access properties is to use the dot notation. An important thing to remember is the dot notation only works with valid identifiers. If I have an invalid identifier, meaning it's a valid string, but you know it's not going to be, I can't use it without strings, without quotes, then I have to use the square brackets, wrap the entire thing in quotes, and access it like that. Valid identifiers, I have the option, hey, dot notation or square brackets, but with things that aren't valid identifiers, I have to use square brackets with strings. So what do you think is a better practice? Do you think it's better for us to always use valid identifiers and always try using dot syntax, or know that that's not always going to be a possibility, so then we'll always just resort to using strings and square brackets, or like a mixture of both? What do you prefer to use? What's that?
like dot notation seems ideal, but it would have to come to string.
Yeah, so that's actually the, let's see. Valid identifiers and dot notation, absolutely, yeah. So we always want to use valid identifiers and dot notation as long as we can. So this, you know, we haven't had problems with this. We've named variables our entire JavaScript careers. Some of you, that's like since 10 weeks ago. But we've been using valid identifiers. That's not a new thing. If we can continue using valid identifiers, that's great. We continue using dot notation as long as we can, and we only resort to square brackets and invalid identifiers when we absolutely need to. Okay, are there any questions about that? Yeah. If you must have a name for a property that just isn't valid, like starts with a number or something, which sometimes it's just so nice to be able to name your data or structure your data that way. It's hard to kind of picture that right now, but if we're representing large amounts of data and we're using JavaScript objects and each piece of data has an ID, we don't want to limit ourselves to only IDs that don't start with numbers. We'd want stuff like that. You'll actually create a database for that next week, I think. Yeah.
Can you use dot notation if it's a like variable? If you're using a variable to access a property?
So that was a question. What if you're using a variable to access a property? How would you use a variable to access a property?
Like if the property name was a variable.
If the property name was a variable, that's a great question. So here we've got, I don't know, let's do color, number of students. I like color. Let's do color. Let's say, for some reason, and this does happen a lot, we have our property name as a string, and actually I'll change this. Property name is a string stored in a variable. So this variable is a string. Its value is color, which is the property name on the school bus. How do we then access color on the school bus, using this variable? It has all the data we need. It has the value color. How do I access that on school bus? What's up? So property name? Let's think about this, and we'll take a quick vote before running it. So there are two ways that we can access properties: dot notation and square brackets. Right? Which way is going to work and which way isn't? So I was going to ask you to raise your hands. Don't raise your hands. Just think for a moment which one is going to work. One of these is going to console log undefined, and one of these is going to console log yellow. Okay, everyone think about it. I'm going to run this. That's confusing because I got a bunch of console logs, but these are the last two, so we're looking at the last two. Undefined, yellow. So this gave us undefined, and this gave us yellow. Why did this give us undefined? So it returns so one answer might be because it returns a string that's not a valid identifier, but this string actually is a valid identifier.
It's wrapped in the data type of string is wrapped. It's wrapped in code.
It's wrapping. So what do you mean?
Like the valid syntax for when you use a dot to call the object property, it has to be valid identifier without the collision mark.
Oh, so it has to be, okay, so if we use the dot notation, it has to be a valid identifier, but without the quotation marks. Color is actually wrapped in quotes, so this wouldn't work. I mean, the idea behind that is correct, but it's not the reason that we're getting undefined here.
It's because property name isn't a identifier within the object.
It's because, like, the literal word property name, this thing, is not a property on school bus. We don't have a key named property name. So when we use dot notation, and this is important because this trips a lot of people up, when we use dot notation, JavaScript literally looks for a thing with that exact name within the object. So if we had a property that had the name property name, just to confuse everyone, and its value was like, I don't know, poop emoji, then we would get property name. Or we would get this value when we use dot notation. Right, we would get the property name. But this way, when we use square brackets, we must give it a string. So when we give it the variable property name in here, it knows that it's looking for a string. It gets the value of this variable. And basically, this line 38, is the exact equivalent of doing this. Except instead of hard coding the string, it's going to use the value that is stored in this variable. Okay. So square brackets will use the value stored in the variable. Dot notation will literally look for the thing named that. So now if I run it, we should get poop emoji in yellow, poop emoji yellow. Do it the other way around, we'd have yellow poop. Fun things to think about. Sorry. So any questions about this?
Can you add the property name that way into the object?
So can we add the property name into the object? Let's see, how am I doing? Make sure I haven't skipped any steps. Storing and retrieving values. No, that's exactly what it's supposed to be. Okay. Before we get to that, because that is the next step where we're going to be basically mutating the object, manipulating it a little bit. Does anyone have any questions about creating objects using the object literal syntax? And I should definitely have a semicolon there. Or accessing the properties on an object? Oh, okay, so let's actually start a new file, because I'm going to leave this one alone so it's in the notes and it doesn't get too overwhelmingly full of code examples. So I'm going to need a different noun. What noun are we going to use? Cake. Cake.js. Okay, so I'm going to create, what kind of cake? Chocolate cake. What's the property of chocolate cake? Icing, frosting. What's the value? Chocolate, yeah. I guess it could have been like true or something. Ah. Ooh, toppings. Let's get to that in a moment. Size. Okay. So let's just say that we created the chocolate cake, we create it with icing, and then later on we want to add size. I'm just going to do my normal debugging thing here. I'm just going to make sure that it doesn't have a size, right? If I try and access size on chocolate cake, I should get undefined. So I want to create my object, and then later on, so down here, after I've already tried accessing size, I want to add a size to my chocolate cake. We use dot notation and square brackets to access the value for a property, but we can also use the exact same syntax to add a value. So this will access the chocolate size unless I use the assignment operator and assign a value there. So what size do we want to give it? 7 inches. Is that large or small? I don't know cake sizes, and I can't think. That's a 3-person cake. Let's make it like 70 inches. That way everyone at boot camp can have some. Yay. So this will either alter an existing property or create a new property. So now if I console log size, whoops, we should get 70 inches. So I create the object without a size. We log size, we should get undefined. I then add size in there later on. And now it's 70 inches. Let's do it one more time. Chocolate cake, let's do it with square brackets, just for fun. Size equals, what should we change the size to? Small. Or just 2. Like, what does that mean? 2 cakes? 2 inches? 2 centimeters? 2 meters? Who knows? We want to be ambiguous. And then I'm going to console log the size again. Okay, what's size going to be at this point? Will we not have 70 inches and 2?
It'll say undefined 70 inches 2.
Undefined 70 inches 2. Because it is literally undefined, has not been defined. Then it's been set to 70 inches, and then it's been reassigned to 2. So now the value is 2. It completely loses the 70 inches. And these are both valid ways of reading and writing to an object. So let's run it. Boom, 2. Can I console log the whole object? Absolutely. Console log chocolate cake. Icing chocolate size 2. That is the entire object. And you can play around with this in the node REPL. But if you create an empty object, you have an empty object. If you then add some sort of property to it, whoops. It now is an object with that key value pet, with that property. And like play around with this as much as you want. You can reassign, you can create new properties, do whatever you want. But Empty object has nothing, and then we add things to it. Just key value pairs, yeah.
So no, if you assign the name of the object in the node terminal, while you were just doing right now,
Yeah, sure, no problem.
would it show two names or just reassign?
So if I have an object with name Otis, and I then change the name to be Lola, one of the other dogs, if I evaluate my object right here now, when I did it before the name was Otis, if I do this now, is it going to be name Otis, is it going to be name Lola, or is it going to be name Otis and Lola? Name Lola, because this is the assignment operator. This isn't us appending a string, it isn't adding to a string, it's doing nothing but assigning. So the name property on this object is now assigned to this string.
Also, then the reason why before, for example, the name showed unchanged steps was because he had a console log.
Oh, right, the only reason in this example that I see the changes is, yeah, because I console log in between each change to show which change, what the changes we're actually doing. So the question is, when would you update an object later on and not just put all the values in the initial object? It depends. Objects will change over time. Sometimes an object is created by one piece of code, one file over here, and you want to update it from this file. Sometimes an object shouldn't have a property until a later time, like it shouldn't have it from the immediate time it was created. Sometimes objects just need to be a little bit more dynamic depending on the content within them.
Is it also possible to change the name of the object and then the property of it as well?
So is it possible to change like this and this?
Yeah.
Uh,
How you were doing it.
so you can't change the name of the key. You can create a new key and delete the old key, but you can't say change icing to this. You'd have to say like chocolate cake dot frosting equals chocolate and delete chocolate cake dot icing, and now you've got that change. But yeah. Okay, how are we doing for time? It's almost time for a break. Does anyone have any questions so far about storing values? Oh, okay. So, one more thing before we take a break is I want to show you, let's add a couple more things to the chocolate cake so there's more properties. Birthday, true or false? Like wedding, true or false? What if they were both true? Birthday, wedding cake. What if you wanted a wedding cake that was like birthday cake flavored? Yeah, yeah. Exactly. Think about that. Is it possible to put a condition inside? What do you mean?
If, for example, is it possible to put an option of coming out, option coming out either true or false, depending on what you're trying to do?
So is it possible to put a condition here? So like wedding will be true or false depending on certain other attributes. Not directly, in the way that if I create a variable, something, I don't know, I can't just stick logic in here. I can't assign the value of this variable to be some logic. What do we use to define bits of logic in our code? Functions, right? So we could add a function into this object that will allow us to do that, and we'll look at that after the break. But yeah, that's a good question. We can add behavior, we can add logic to our objects using functions, because all of these primitive types and values are ways that we represent our data, our state. This chocolate cake's icing is chocolate. We use functions to define behavior. So what does our chocolate cake act like, or can we evaluate certain properties later on? So actually with that, unless there's any more questions, anything from Calgary? Why line 9? I think we already went over that though. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I just have some questions about
not sure if I understand the question. Are you talking about like when I do it outside of the object down here? Is that still a key? Is size still a key on the object, and is it still the value? Okay, yeah. Okay. So terminology-wise, yeah. So if I create an object this way, I have key-value pairs. Icing is the key, chocolate is the value. This entire thing is a property, right? The icing property, the name is icing, the value is chocolate. When I create my properties this way, still a property, still a property. This is the key, this is still the value. So terminology is pretty much the same, but you will hear property used a lot more. Because it's like, hey, just assign 70 to the size property, or check the value of the icing property. When we're looking at the data structure this way, it's quite easy to talk about it as key-value pairs. And when you're learning about them, it's easier to kind of differentiate between the two. This is the key, this is the value. But most of the time, you will hear them talked about as properties. Size property, whether I defined it at the time I created the object, or whether I added it to the object later on. Does that answer the question? Cool. Okay, any other? Whoa, there's a lot of replies there. Okay, cool. I think that's cleared up then. Any other questions? Got a question about objects? Nah. You came late to lecture, so I mean, I'd be surprised if you were getting all this. Chocolate cakes, really complex stuff. Okay, let's take a 10-minute break, and then when we come back, we'll talk about things like adding functions and objects within objects and all other types of fun stuff. Let me switch this to break. Okay. Calgary, let me know if you can hear me okay still. There is now mint Earl Grey tea and Kleenex in Calgary. They have mint Earl Grey and Kleenex. Damn it, I didn't have a chance to minimize. Wait, what was that one? It's good. Okay, alright, enough. Although I wouldn't mind that just being like the background on my laptop forever. We'll get rid of it. Okay. Does anyone have any questions come to mind over the break? No? Alright, what did I say we would talk about? Notes. Oh, right, okay, yes, we're going to get to methods, we're going to get to nested objects. It's all fun stuff now. Okay, it's going to be a little bit fast-paced as well. One question I did get during the break was, if we create an array, let's create an array of emojis with some jazz hands and like the cool guy and... What's that? Oh no, it's not hex code. It's my own keyboard shortcuts. It's like I have keyboard shortcuts for a lot of things. Social insurance number, credit cards. Obviously, I can't show you those things. What could I show you? I don't know. Emojis. But let's say I created emojis. I think it's definitely in tomorrow's lecture. But has everyone's accessed? I think some sort of property or method like length on an array. Or has for each? Have you looked at for each? No? Somebody might have looked at for each or like split or join. Yeah, split and join are methods. Like if I do that, it's oh wait, no, not split. Split is on a string. Join is on an array. So this is a function. When we create an array comes with some built-in functions already. Like it's a special object that allows us to order things like this, and comes with properties that can be really helpful, like length that will give us the number of items in the array, and join, which is a function that does certain things on an array. For each is another one, but you'll learn about all these things tomorrow. Just show you that they are in fact functions. So these were created for us. These are built into the JavaScript language. When we create an array, the object comes with these properties. Right? Unlike when we create an object and it has no properties, we create an array, it has properties. One question I got was, if I have my array, it has length, what would happen if I reassigned this to be like, I don't know, 20 or hello? Range error invalid. Damn. Okay. So some objects can have special rules in place that say you can't actually reassign certain properties. So with an array, you can't reassign the .length property. But let's see if I can reassign the join function. Yeah, I can. Okay. So you don't ever really want to do this stuff, but it was a question, so I thought I'd bring it up. Arrays have a function called join that we can call and pass it certain parameters. If I do the line I just did above here, emojis.join is no longer this really cool function that joins all the elements into a string. Emojis.join is now literally the word hello. So it comes with built-in properties. We can override these properties. We shouldn't. Sometimes we can anyway. But yeah, just something cool to notice, that like some of these built-in objects do have some pretty cool properties. Array is one of the built-in objects, yeah.
Something like that will never be on a test, right?
No. Question was, will that be on a test? No, it won't be on a test. These are just things that I find interesting. I thought this was a good question during the break, so yeah. Yeah. So I got my emojis array. Arrays are objects. That means I can add whatever I want. I don't know. Color. Why not? My array is now yellow. Emojis.color. Does that make sense for an array to have a color? Not really. But yeah, they're objects.
So what happens when you just put in the variable emojis? Will it say yellow and then green? Like, how does it organize itself?
So it knows I overrode join. This is just kind of how it gets evaluated by the REPL or console log. And then, yeah, it has a color property, which is kind of funny to look at, yeah.
Is that property, is that emojis free, or is it still not? Is emojis free undefined?
Like emojis.length, you mean? It's still 3 items in the array. It just has these extra properties now that I defined.
So you can't access them?
No, I can't access them with an index, but I can access them with properties. Same for anything that's an object. So if I create a function and assign a function to a variable, I can add properties to that. So you can add properties to any type of object. Arrays and functions are objects with extra special behavior and properties. The object literal is just the basic object. Okay, so moving on. I thought that was a cool question. Methods. Right, so we've talked about objects, can be key value pairs where the key is a valid identifier or literally any string, and the value can be any value. We've talked about primitive values, which are the fundamental values, which is what we build all of our data structures from. They are the data. But we can put in anything that can be a value, so that includes functions. What else can be a value in JavaScript? Other than primitive types. Arrays. What else? Other variables, but like, what values could those variables have? Maybe other objects. Maybe we have objects within objects that have like a property that's an array that has an object in it with a property that's a function. Right? So the value can be any value, and it can be as complex or simple as we want. It could literally be the word null, or it could be an object that has an array that has a function, all these other things. So let's create a new file. What thing are we going to be working with? What noun? Done cake and school bus. What's it? Rubber? Or wrapper? Like wrapper? Oh, wrapper, like the things you put around candy. Okay, cool. Yeah, give me a wrapper. How do you spell Tupac? I think it's like Tupac. Is that it? Yes. I'm terrible at spelling. And anything to do with pop culture, so that's a pretty good achievement for me. Should it be capitalized, though, because it's like a noun? Or lowercase because it's a variable name? Lowercase because it's a variable name. This would be confusing to other developers. Okay, so what does Tupac have? Alive, dead, undefined. Cool. Alive, dead, it's undefined. What else? I guess name, why not? This might play nicely into a future example too. What else? I don't know, how many songs? A lot? Cool. Does he have a lot of songs? I feel like famous enough to have a lot of songs. Not a one-hit wonder, not sure, not familiar with any of his music. Sure it's good. He seems like a cool guy. What behavior? Okay, so what can Tupac do? Right, this is the state, the things he has, the things that like represent who he is. But what can he do? He what? Inspire. He can inspire. Inspire. Right, this is going to be some sort of behavior that he can do, not a state, not like true, false, or a string or something. So this is going to be a function. And when I want a value to be a function, I literally write the word function to create a new function. This creates a function as a value. I don't have to give it a name. I could, but I'm not going to because I don't have to. So inspire, the key inspire points to the value function, so this property is a function. I'm going to throw another piece of terminology at you. When a property is a function, we call this a method. Not something you have to memorize, but if someone comes up to you and says, hey, what method does your object have? They're talking about whatever property is a function. Or like call the inspire method means call the function that just happens to be a property on an object. Can you reference a previously made function? Yes, that is such a great question. So I could, for example, create another function. So what else does Tupac do, or every rapper do, or something? What? New song. Okay, like function, I don't know, create new song. We'll have to define some behavior here. What does create a new song do? Oh, that would have been so much better down here then, because then it wouldn't be as confusing. Okay, I'm going to switch these around because the example will be better. So create new song is going to be the function that we're doing here, and then inspire is going to be a function up here. Boom. Nope, that got weird. There we go. Cool. All right. Okay, this will work better a little bit later. All right, so one thing at a time. First of all, all right, we're just going to do some console logs to make it simple for now, and then we'll get a little bit more complex. So I'm going to console log, I don't know, I feel like jazz hands are pretty inspiring. And creating a new song, let's just do musical score. Kind of see that. It's like music. Cool. Okay. So we've created this normal way, keys and values. This key is a function that I've defined inline within the object. But I can just as easily do something like this. Fix this. Sorry. I can create a key, and the value can be an existing variable. So in this case, inspire is an existing variable to a function. So I'm going to call this, I don't know, I guess I could call it inspire and just look something like this. Or I could name this whatever I want it to be. Call it like pancakes, because I can. But I'm not going to be confusing, so I'm going to call it inspire. But yeah, just like I can create an inline function here, I can point to an existing function. That's cool. That's fine. Nope. Because this is the value of the function. You will get into this a lot tomorrow, but this is the function. If I put in the brackets, it would be the return value of the function, and I could do a whole lecture on the difference between the two. But yeah, both are valid. Anyway, so I can access these the same way. Let's see. Any questions? Freestyle. They can freestyle. Yeah, why not? Freestyle. Too bad there's no M&M emoji. Can you explain that again? Again, please. What do you mean by that? East Coast versus West Coast beef? Some people understand it. I don't understand that. Pop culture. Rap culture. I don't know. Hip hop. Whatever. They're both typing. Okay. So, what would be like a word for freestyle? Someone just give me a random word. What? Lyric. There we go. You tell Tupac to freestyle, he says lyric. Sounds like something he would do, right? What? What am I explaining again? Okay, so while getting a response from that, so if I wanted to access one of these properties to console log the name, I would go tupac.name. If I want to call the create new song method or the freestyle method, how do I do it? Just like that, too. Yeah, that's right. And then call it, yeah, because it's a method. So exactly the same. This accesses the value for the property, and because the value is a function, I'm going to call that function. Do the exact same thing with freestyle. There you go. You now have an object with behavior. You have an object with methods that you can call just like this. So let's make sure everything's working by node wrapper. Oh, whoops. There we go. We get, damn it, everything's black on black. But there is the song, and there's lyric. I'll just say. There we go. Create new song and lyric. Okay. didn't get a response to that. So one of the main reasons you want to have a method on an object is so that that method can interact with the state of that object, with the other properties within that object. So, for example, create new song should maybe increment the number of songs. So let's give this an actual value, I don't know, 10. Is that too small? 100? Sure. Let's increment songs. So within this function, within this method, I want to increment the songs on the current object that this method is a part of. How do I increment the song property on this current object that the method is a part of? Yeah, call the property, right? Like songs and then like plus plus. But songs isn't a variable, right? This is going to look for a variable within the function called song. Songs is a property on the 2-pack object. Songs is a property on this object. So how do I access songs? Same way I access it outside, right? So I could go 2pack.songs. Does everyone understand why I would have to do it this way? It's going to look for a locally scoped variable, then other scope, and then a global scope. Yeah, it's going to look for a variable called songs, not the song property on the 2-pack object. So this is almost correct, almost, and this will work in this case. But the way that we should do it within a method of an object is by using this. Now this is a whole big thing, a big subject that you could have multiple lectures on. For today, we're just going to say this is how you should access the current object from within a method. So instead of 2pack.songs, you should say this.songs. This refers to the current object that the method is a part of. There are really good reasons why you would want to do it this way, but they don't make enough sense until later on in the bootcamp. But I can give you like one basic reason. If I change the variable name, I don't know, to Biggie. Is that how you spell Biggie? I.E. You know it. Then I'd have to change every single time that I referenced it, right? Which can be like mildly annoying. Yeah.
What if the better example is the object is named rapper and then it has all the names?
Might it be a cool example if the object was named wrapper and it had all the names? Yeah, maybe. Maybe we'll do that in a little bit. But we can create objects for whatever we want. So we can create a generic wrapper, or we can create a specific wrapper, or we can create an object that holds many wrappers. So it's however we need to represent data in an application.
Since you can create a function within the object property,
Mm-hmm.
can we also like if or
Yeah, so the question is, we got functions within the object, so can we do other things? Can we add like if statements and do everything else? Yeah, so these functions are no different than normal functions, other than they are a part of this object, so they can access this object. But apart from that, yeah, we can use if statements, we can pass it parameters, it can return values. 1 second. Just hit myself in the tooth as I was taking a sip there. So let's say, I don't know, maybe freestyle actually takes in a lyric. And if there's a lyric passed in, then we return, I don't know, cool. Otherwise, we just return, like, poop emoji. If you freestyle without a lyric, you get poop. How about that? So now, let's actually do this right here, yeah. 2pack.freestyle is the method. Call it like that, but it accepts a parameter, lyric. So if I pass in nothing, we should get poop emoji. So in this case, I'll get poop emoji. But if I do the exact same thing and pass in a lyric, then I'll get sunglass emoji. Normal type function things, right? Return values, if statements, parameters. It just happens to exist on 2pack, so I use dot notation to access it.
if we can do all these things in there, can we? Because then I asked you before, and you said there are certain statements that exist that we can use for an array, but cannot use for an object.
Yeah.
So if we have multiple properties, for example, P block, and let's say song, and then there's like maybe 3 or 4 different kinds of songs in there, and can we not split them and then join them together?
So, I think the question is along the lines of if we have arrays, we can join arrays. We can detect the length of arrays. We can do like for each and other stuff over arrays. But those methods and properties don't exist on an object. But what if I had like songs was a bunch of songs that I wanted to join and things? Then could I access those properties on that property? That got wordy. So you can't access things like length and join on an object because it's not an array. It doesn't have those things built in. But I could have, what would Tupac have many of? Dogs? What? Trumpets? Oh, girlfriends. Because I'm wearing a toque indoors. Girlfriends, I can't hear. All right, so he did have multiple girlfriends. I don't know, what's one of their names? What's up? Quincy Jones' daughter. Oh, now I gotta escape it because it's a single quote. Anyway, that's not how you spell daughter. Is there an H in there? Yes. Love when I spell things correctly. What else? I don't know. Some one. Okay. So I can't join an object because that behavior has never been defined. But I can create properties where the value is an array. Then I could say tupac.girlfriends.join. We'll have a great time if we join all of them. I don't know, maybe I'll just join it with like a pipe operator, and then maybe we'll just console log that to see what that looks like. These examples can get really out of hand quickly. Yeah, so there we go. They're joined. But that's because I'm joining the array, not the object.
We can still create an array within.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can create arrays, you can create functions within the object itself. And you can create other objects within those. So maybe alive dead is actually not undefined. Maybe it's an object, right? There, just create another object that has a key like alive that's maybe. Oh, whoops. And a key that's like dead that's maybe another object that's like, I have no idea. Natural causes. That's also an array that has, but one of those happens to be an object. Right? So yeah, like the value can be, the value can be any value in JavaScript, which means primitive values, but also means data structures because those are also values. So I could have thrown a function in there if I wanted to as well. This is not a good example of good programming. I want everyone to take note of this. If you see this in real code, bad code. But this shows like the power of what we can do here. The key is a string, and the value is any value. Any value. I will run this code just to prove that it actually still works. Actually, let's do something fun. Let's access heart attack. So I'll move this down in a moment. I'm just going to write it here so we can see everything on the screen. But if I wanted to console log the first natural cause of Tupac's death, how would I access that? How would I go down the chain to access the first natural cause? So we got Tupac. There we go. Dot. Alive dead. Dot dead. Dot natural causes. Bracket 0. Yeah, exactly. There you go. So nothing new, nothing special happens here. But when we put objects within objects, let's just put that down here, make sure it works. Nothing changes. So I access a value on an object using dot notation. And if that happens to be an object that I want to access a value on, I do it with dot notation. If that happens to be a value that's an object that I want to access, lost my words a little bit, but you get what I'm saying. If it happens to be an array, then we could access it with array index notation. I think that's an official thing. And this happens to be a string, so I could call like split on it because we can split strings. Now we'll get it as an array. Heart attack.
Is there any way to index properties, or you have to just make it an array?
So the question was, is there any way to index properties of an object? So what do you mean? You want to access like the first property on the object? You want to access like, instead of accessing alive dead, you want to say just give me the first property?
Imagine you could like manipulate a string and then to be the name of the property, and then you could access that. I'll ask you.
Well, it might be a good question though. I just don't understand it fully. Manipulate a string?
Like if you wanted to have different alive deads and you wanted to calculate, or you want to access the right one depending on X, Y, Z, right?
Okay, maybe you ask me that later.
Yeah.
I didn't understand the question in Calgary, so I'm not going to repeat it. How are we doing in Calgary? Dead, Biggie alive, coastal beef. I still don't get it, but cool. But that's, yeah, I mean, that's like, you could copy and paste that straight into your node REPL, and that's an object. Only thing is that should be a lowercase b. Everyone see that? Camel case, not upper camel. So, wrapper. Okay. Where are we at? We have looked at methods, we've looked at nested objects, we've looked at arrays in objects, not arrays of objects, but we're kind of coming towards the end here. So, I want to do one more thing. I'm going to create a new file. We could do wrappers, or we could do something else plural. So, someone say wrappers, or someone say another noun, and we'll go with that. Bands. Bands.js. I accidentally named it SJ instead of JS. That's just annoying. Move bands.sj to bands.js. Bands. Okay. So we're going to create multiple bands. Hmm? What? Queen! I'm having a lot of trouble hearing today. Queen. Wait, no, that's going to be the name. Yeah, okay. So here's an object where the name of the band is Queen. Boom, did it. Okay. We're going to create multiple ones. I'm going to store it in an array for now, because that kind of makes sense, right? When we have multiple things, maybe we want it in an array. We can always change our minds later, but for now I'm going to put it in an array. What other band? Let's just do name for now. Huh? Beatles. Beatles. I know that one. We can, sure. Kanye. That's not a band. Wait, does that count as a band? No, Kanye. Bananas is a band? Wow, you too many. What? Okay, well that's enough bands. Let's just define a little bit more behavior. So what does every band have? Like albums. What's albums going to be? Let's just put a number. Yeah, I don't know, like many. Right, like Queen definitely has many. I think the Beatles has probably like the most. I would assume they were around for a while. Definitely famous. Backstreet Boys albums. Just dropped a new one, didn't they? Cool. What else we got? Albums. Kanye. College Dropout was the only good one. Cool. All right, that works. Do you want to add anything else to these? No, I think that's good. Guitars. Now this is. I could keep just doing examples and then realize I haven't taught you anything. On tour, yes or no? Yeah. So let's say I want to. let's just log out all of the albums. Console log every single band's album to the terminal. So it should be many, the most, just dropped a new one, college dropout. And I should give this a name, so we're going to call this var bands equals. Okay. How am I going to log out all of the album names? Loop through the array. What's everyone's favorite way to loop through an array? For each? Oh, right, for each. Sorry, that confused me for a second. Tomorrow, everyone's favorite way will be for each. For now, it's for var I equals 0, I is less than, right? I plus plus. Ah, I deleted everything. Then it came back. I plus plus? What's the difference between I plus plus and plus plus I? No. C++ developers write it this way, JavaScript developers write it this way. That's the difference. It would make a difference if we were doing some sort of assignment with this right here, if it was being evaluated in a different way, but it doesn't. So that's kind of cool. See it written another way, they're probably dealing with a C++ developer. So we have bands. Let's do var band equals bands there, right? Everyone comfortable with this? Just hand if you want me to explain anything. No. It's always a nice way. You can do things like bands I and then start accessing like properties this way. I always prefer to break out the thing I am iterating over as the first thing I do in a for loop. So you have the array, grab the item, and then start working with that item. So this is always my first line, creating a new variable that represents the thing I'm iterating over. I have bands. Right now I have the single band. How do I console log the single band's albums? Dot albums. Absolutely. Okay, if I log this, if I run this, what will get logged to the console? Maybe an error. Not an error. I did not miss my S's. My S's are on point right now. What am I going to do? Node bands. Many, the most, just dropped a new one, didn't they? College dropout was the only good one. Even update it, right? Like put a, what would come before a band? Oh, that would be great if there was a Simon Cowell emoji. Wasn't there? So, yeah, cool. Yay, all the albums. Any questions about looping through an array and accessing the objects? I'm just taking two things that we already know how to do, looping through an array, accessing an object. Okay, sometimes though, we don't want to represent the bands this way. So you've got to think about how the data structure represents data. Arrays represent, or arrays are a data structure that represent data in an ordered way. So the significance arrays apply to each individual band here is that this is the first band, this is the second band, this is the third, and this is the fourth. Or this is the 0th, 1th, and 2th, second, first, whatever. You know what I'm talking about. But maybe order doesn't matter. Or maybe order could even be confusing, because why is Queen 0, but Beatles is 1, but Backstreet Boys is 3, and Kanye's 4? Maybe that's the right order, I don't know. So arrays kind of force us into... Nima got excited because I said Kanye. Damn it, is that me? Or is that you?
Never mind, they said.
Sweet. How far do I have to go back? 1 minute. What did I say for this last minute? Something like arrays are ordered and objects aren't. Did you get that whole thing? The whole lecture? Thanks, Thomas. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about objects. Whatever, I don't think it was that important. Arrays are ordered, and that can mean some significance. But maybe we don't want that, or maybe we want to order it or structure our data a little bit differently. One way we might actually want to structure this is instead of being able to access the entire Queen object or entire Beatles object that could contain many, many properties, instead of doing it 0, 1, 2, that's kind of meaningless. Maybe we want to access them using their name. So I go to bands and I ask for the band with the name Queen, and then I get the entire object that represents the band Queen. That makes a lot more sense to me. So instead of using an array to represent these things, I might use an object. But objects, I can't just put the values in because they don't have any order. They have no way of being represented, right? An array, the key is basically the index and the value is whatever value. But in an object like this, I have to define the key value pairs. So the key, I'm maybe going to just use the band's name, right? So queen is the key and the value is the entire object that is the band queen. And I'll do this for all of them. So Beatles is the key and the object is the entire Beatles object. Backstreet Boys, not camel cased. Kanye. So it was fine as an array, but it wasn't the best as an array. Now the data is represented a little bit nicer, I think, because now if I want to access band like Queen, I just go bands.queen. If I want to access Beatles, bands.beatles, not bands2 or 1 or whatever. Yeah.
Like a huge list of, like, is there an automatic way that you could code it, change it?
So the question was, if I had a huge list, would there be an automatic way that I could code this? If my list got very large, I'd probably be taking it from a database or a JSON file or something, and yes, there would be some sort of dynamic programming going on to create this structure or just to bring it into memory temporarily. But it's a real scenario where you might have this object. You might not have created it, but you might have an object like this. So anyway, I've got this object, bands.queen, all that stuff. How do I loop through this? You know, I wanted to loop through and print all the albums before. That works for an array because we're using indexes. How do I loop through an object? For in. Is that what you say? Yeah, for in. For in. So there's a special type of for loop. I'm just going to comment this out so we can leave it there but not use it. For in looks like this. That's what a for in array looks like. For key in object. So this will loop through every single key in an object, and then we have access to that key. If we have access to the object's key, we can get the value. Right, we know that. So this will just loop through every key in an object. No questions there. So I'm going to console log key, and I'm going to change object to be the object we actually want to log over, which is going to be, or loop over, sorry, which is going to be bands. So for each key in our bands object, console log the key. What do you think we're going to see logged to the console? What are all the keys of the object band? The name, right? These are all the keys. Queen, Beatles, Backstreet Boys, Kanye. These are all the keys. So when I say for key in bands, and I could name this whatever I want, could be pancakes again. But when I do a for in loop, I get the keys. It's really important to remember. So if I print this out, those are all the keys. I could have named those keys anything. They could be more like identifiers, where it's just like 0, 1, 5, hexadecimal string, whatever. But I just happen to make them the names because that seems way nicer to me. But yeah, for in will give us all the keys of an object. As a quick side note, if I created an array and it had, do I have my array from earlier? Yeah, right there. If I create an emojis array, and I say for var key in emojis, and console log that, remember it's an object so I can do this. For key in object, for key in my array. What do you think I'm going to get logged out to the console if I do this over an array? For of? Different type of loop. How many items do I have in my array? 3. What are the indexes of each item? 0, 1, and 2. So arrays are special objects where the properties are actually just the indexes. The reason I bring this up just briefly is because you will see this syntax. You will see for in used on arrays, which is fine because it's an object still. It just gives you the indexes. The thing about for in is you can't guarantee the order. So although pretty much all the time you'll get the indexes in this order or the properties in the order that they were created, there's no guarantee that you'll get the right order. But yeah, it does give you the keys. Anyway, back to our bands object for key in bands, still giving us all the band names. How do I, using this for loop, how do I get each band's albums and print that out instead? So I have the key. Using the key, how do I get the value? Key.albums was one guess. I'm going to log that as the first thing, so we'll see the albums, or whatever this evaluates to, and then we'll see what the actual key is. Loop through it. Okay, undefined, so definitely not that way. What is the key? What's up? It's the key in the key value pair. What is a key in an object? What is the type of a key in an object? At least one person said it. It's a string. Keys in objects are strings. So what is the key? It's a string every time. Can I just create a string in JavaScript and call albums on it? Hell no. The key is the string. I'm looping through the keys of the object. So I access a value on an object using either dot notation or square brackets. Which one can I use this time? Right? Like albums dot queen would give me this object, or albums square brackets queen would give me that object. It's just a dynamic way of looping through all the keys. So which way will work and which way won't? I feel like I've asked this question before. Why will the first one work? Why will the second one not work? Okay, I'm gonna run this, and I mess something up. That's exactly what it should be. Shouldn't it be bands instead of albums? I'm sorry if that was confusing, because I messed up the code. Okay, now does it make more sense? Yeah, sorry. Feel free to yell at me way earlier on when I'm messing up. Be like, no, Sam, you wrote the wrong thing. Don't have to wait until like I've embarrassed myself in front of everyone. Hold on, just trying to, there we go. All right, I was running it. Okay. So the top one is clearly the thing we wanted. It's looping through each individual band in the bands object. The second thing, undefined, is not what we wanted. We rarely want undefined. So why did it work out this way? Key is gonna be the key of the object as a string. So first time it goes through the array, it's gonna be Queen as a string. The second time, it's gonna be Beatles as a string. Third time, Backstreet Boys as a string. Fourth time, Kanye as a string. If I go to access bands.key, it's literally looking for the identifier key. Like, I would have to have a band named key, then dot key would work. It's literally looking for the thing named key. But because key is a string, I can do this more dynamically, use square brackets, put the variable, right, that's value as a string in there, and that will get me whatever the value is. The values are the band objects. So one more time. Damn it. Name is key. There we go. Yeah, that doesn't look nice, does it? I'm going to get rid of this then. And maybe even this, but just with a comment so you can see what it was. Anyway, if I loop through this again, this is looping through all of the values in the object. If I look at all of the values in my band object, there's a value, there's a value, there's a value. This is looping through the values. These are all the values. And this will come up in an assignment today. This is how you loop through all the values of an object. You loop through the keys, and then using the key, you get the value. First thing I like to do is define the object, and then I can use it. Go ahead. Can I use this in this for n? This is a topic that could span multiple lectures, and although you could use this in this for in loop, you couldn't use it for the purpose we are trying to use it for. This would refer to weird things. Not even week 6, like advanced lecture, I don't know. This right here will refer to whatever the function that we're running the code in is bound to, which in Node is the exports object, and in the browser is the window object, and already eyes glazing over, not worth talking about today. We don't even know what the exports object is. We'll find out on Friday. So we're just gonna like, it's not the most difficult thing. There's just so much to it that we don't have time to cover it all and for it to all make sense immediately. So for now, we'll just kind of avoid this unless it's in methods. I should have shot down that question a bit sooner. I went on a rant there, I'm sorry. So, yes, this is, let's compare the two. Let's just take a second to do that. This is how I would access the bands, the individual band out of the bands array, if it was, or yeah, the bands, if it was an array. This is how I would do it if bands is an object, okay? Side-by-side comparison. Very similar. Like just look at these two lines and these two lines. Right, looping through the array, you get the band at the different index. Loop through an object, you get the band at the key. Okay, are there any questions about this? Yeah. Yeah, so how would I console log the actual albums? Well, I mean, I did the exact same thing right here, so boom. Band.albums. Loop through the keys. Use the key to get the value. Access the albums property of this object. Just use dot notation. Loop through the bands. Access the individual band. Call band.albums. Console log it. I'm going to have to comment this out because it's no longer an array. There we go. Any questions about that? Cool. Okay. We are definitely at the end of lecture. It is 10:55. Yeah, I think that's enough stuff. Did we get to everything? Objects of objects, yeah, this will come up today. Think key points is to remember that we can create object literals using the object literal syntax, right, which is like that. We can store key value pairs in there immediately, or we can add properties later on. That means that I could create an empty object and then populate all of its properties later on. Maybe I'd do it in a for loop or something because I want to be really dynamic or store data a certain way. We can also access properties using dot syntax or square braces. We can loop through all the properties. Now, this isn't the most common thing to do, but it does come up, where we get the key as a string and then we use square brackets to access it. It's a lot of information today. I mean, every day you're in boot camp. Yay. Any questions about anything that we've covered today with objects? Yeah. Yeah, so the question was when we use the for in loop, it automatically picks out the properties within the object? Kind of. When we use a for in loop, it automatically picks out the keys of the object. Because remember, the properties is the whole thing, the key value pair. For in just gives us the key. Remember this. It just gets you the keys with a key. So if we have the key, how do we get the value? Well, the key is just a string, but the whole property is the key plus the value. Given a key, we can get the value, but we have to do that extra step to actually get the value. So I wouldn't want you to call it like the property, because I don't want you to get confused and think, oh, this is looping through all the bands in the bands object. No, it's looping through the keys. You have to then use the key to get the individual object out. You have to use the key to get the value. You'll be practicing this a lot, and it will still mess you up weeks from now, getting this a little bit wrong, but that's cool, that's fine, that's part of programming.
Is there a way to change the order
So is there a way to change the order of the way keys show up in the for loop? So by JavaScript's definition, a for in loop will not return keys in any specific order. That's like the guarantee. It might come back in any order, whatever. Keep that in mind, right? Order is not guaranteed. However, it appears to be that the order is always the order that the properties were created in. So it seems like browsers and Node.js are keeping track of the order and using that, but they're not like supposed to, or they don't have to. So the order is never guaranteed. We don't use for in for order. We just want to get all the keys. We don't care which order they come back in. If we did, we'd probably use an array, right? If we care about order. Anything from Calgary? You feeling good over there? Too many Giphies. Cool. Everyone ready to tackle objects? Feeling good? Okay. Let's get to it then.